And I was just glued. I'm telling you, I was glued to the edge of my seat listening to what he was saying. And I was like, wow, I can do this. And that's kind of what stumbled me into real estate investing.
Welcome to the Freedom Point Real Estate Podcast, where we talk about creating more time freedom through passive real estate investing. Passive investing in real estate challenges conventional investment wisdom. We are passionate about learning and sharing resources with others who are ready to transform their investing mindset. Quick disclaimer as always, I am not a CPA, I am not an attorney or a financial advisor. This is not financial advice, not telling you or anyone else what to do. The views and opinions expressed in these podcasts are provided for education and informational purposes only and are not necessarily the views of my employer, ADP. I'm glad you're here. Now let's dig in. All right, welcome back, Freedom Point Podcast listeners. Thank you again for jumping into another episode of the Freedom Point. We're so glad you're here with us today. I've got another amazing guest with me, Clifford Walker. Clifford, welcome to the show.
Ooh, doggy, what is going on, brother? First off, let me say it is an absolute honor, a blessing, a privilege to be here to spend some time with you and your community and chat. I am really looking forward to this. I am. And I mean every bit of that.
Yeah, likewise. And for my listening audience, I had a chance to get caught up here a little bit with Clifford before we hit that record button. He's cut from a similar cloth as I am. Really looking forward to chopping this up with Clifford. Just to give a little bit of a kind of a context and a little bit of a bio for Clifford. He is recognized as, get this, the Cowboy Closer. Super excited to learn more about that. And he's a best-selling author, a philanthropist, and a visionary founder of the Real Estate Corral Investors Network. He's got a proven track record of coaching over, get this, 4,000 aspiring investors. Clifford's a dynamic leader in the real estate industry, known for primarily his experience in wholesaling and his passion for empowering beginners to achieve success in the space as well. So again, Clifford, appreciate you being here with us today. Maybe you can give our listening audience a little bit more, maybe about your story, your background, what you're focused on today, et cetera.
Absolutely. Let me see how far back we want to take this thing. So I'll say this. Before I got started in real estate, I was a truck driver. And so I had absolutely no type of real estate experience, business experience, none of that. I was as green as it came. And so how I got stumbled into real estate was actually quite funny. Hindsight, anyways. I was in West Texas, and if anybody's been out there, there is nothing out there but oil field workers and cotton farms, right? And so I was driving through West Texas, and there was a podcast playing on the radio. And the irony was we were so far out, like that was the only station I was able to pick up. And it's funny because I wasn't really into podcasts or personal development then. And so it was a gentleman out in New York on that podcast talking about how much money he was making doing wholesaling real estate. And I was just glued. I'm telling you, I was glued to the edge of my seat listening to what he was saying. And I was like, wow, I can do this. And I was looking for anything because I absolutely hated my job. And that's kind of what stumbled me into real estate investing.
Yeah, that's great. I'm kind of thinking of like a title for the episode, Truck Driver to Real Estate by Way of Podcast. So really appreciate you sharing that. And it may sound kind of funny, but really deep down, that's really how I got my start in the space as well. I had this itch and I needed to scratch it. And you can scratch it either by the power of networking with others, reading books, or quite frankly, for me, it was consuming hours and hours of podcasts to really learn the space, learn the industry, really kind of cut my teeth, so to speak. So, it really behooves me to not ask the question at this point, the Cowboy Closer story. There's got to be a story there, and how did you earn that nickname? Let's go ahead and start there.
For sure. And so what happened was after going down this kind of rabbit hole on real estate investing or specifically wholesaling, like I was going to every cinema or you know what I mean. I'm getting tongue twisted here. Uh, Trying to figure out how to get started, and I actually got connected with my first coach and mentor. And so once I did, I just hit the ground running. Like I was actually able to get 6 deals under contract my first month. And so one day I come home with a deal, and my wife was like, "Well, I guess you're just the cowboy closer, aren't you?" And I said, "You know what? I am." And so my wife is the one that came up with that name, and it just kind of stuck. Like it's almost like a brand at this point.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and it makes total sense to me. I've got a couple of nicknames for myself as well that were granted to me by my wife. Let's talk about.
Well, hold on. Now you got to share, unless they're not appropriate.
Oh no, they're appropriate for sure. They're mostly acronyms, so we'll catch up after the show on that regard. But I would like to talk to you specifically about kind of your mission or your passion around empowering beginners, and really what inspired you to launch the Real Estate Corral Investors Network, and how does that address the needs of investors?
That's man, I can go down so many different rabbit holes with that one question. I think for me specifically, like I saw a gap in the real estate education space and even like the certain communities, right? um, we've come to a point, and I believe where majority of the people are transactional, and I actually think that's the wrong way to be. I think it's should be more relational, not just with you as a coach or a mentor or a community, but even with us dealing with property owners. Now, I know it may be a little different for you because you specialize in multifamily, but for me, I deal with single family housing going directly to seller of people who are facing foreclosure, who are in probate, who maybe they just lost a loved one, right? So us as real estate investors, what I believe that we're doing is we are building generational wealth by serving other people, right? I am foolish enough to believe that you can put people over profits and still run a profitable company, right? And if we focus on serving other people, it just changes the dynamics of what we're doing, right? Because when these families are going through this tough season in their life, right? They don't need somebody to come in there and pray on them. They need somebody to come in there and pray with them, right? And I believe that that's what has helped me, or at least served me very well.
Yeah, Clifford, that makes total sense, and I really appreciate you kind of highlighting a couple of different things. One, in the real estate community, there's opportunity where there's distress. That distress may manifest itself in a single family home, where there's maybe a death in the family, where the homeowner can't afford their debt service. It could be in multifamily, similar scenarios there. It could even be in the build to rent community, where occupancy levels are skyrocketed to the moon. People can't afford to live in those units, and a developer comes along to kind of assist with producing more supply so that people have other options and there's more competition in that local market. But you nailed it on the head, and that is any way you slice and dice it, whether you're on the single family side, you're on the multifamily side, or really in any asset or facet of real estate, it all comes down to serving others, right? It's a relationship business, it's a people business. And I believe exactly the same thing that you said. If you focus on people over profits, you're going to find success. Do you agree?
Absolutely, 1,000%. Like, and I think people, and maybe social media could be to blame, or at least I like to blame social media. I think social media has highlighted, a certain lifestyle, right? Like and it's way beyond that, you know. Uh, Also, another thing, at least for me too, when I'm talking to these sellers, if I focus on serving, it actually alleviates any pressure off of me needing to be some type of grandmaster closer, right? Because I can come into the conversation with a clear heart and a clear purpose. I'm here to serve you, whether we're a good fit to work together, right? And it's been game changing for me, uh, and that's something that's not just a business model that we have. It's a personal life motto for me at this point.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you for sharing that. Let's talk about maybe the topic of breaking barriers. What are some of the common mistakes that you're seeing in the marketplace today with beginners in making mistakes in real estate? And how do you help those individuals avoid those potential pitfalls?
I think one of the biggest mistakes, even kind of, I mean, we can even kind of piggyback on the points we were just making. They're focusing on the transaction, right? Like I know for me, and again, when we're direct to seller, there's a certain percentage that we're buying these properties at. Well, we need to be able to build trust and likability and have a quality conversation with the seller, um, to where it makes sense for us to be buying that property at that price, right? If you go in there and you ask a seller where everything is going phenomenally well, and you offer them 70% on their property, they're going to hang up on you and they're going to be insulted, right? So you have so many people trying to force a deal, just because they're trying to get that first or second deal done. And it's like, okay, have a quality conversation, figure out what's going on, and if y'all are even a good fit to work together. Because if not, it's just not going to make sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense. There's got to be something in it for both sides of that transaction, and I appreciate you highlighting that.
I'm Zach Haptonstall, CEO and co-founder of Rise 48 Equity. Our goal is to help you protect and grow your wealth by investing in large multifamily apartment buildings. We do all the work as far as sourcing these large apartment buildings from the brokers, doing all of the on-site management with our vertically integrated property management company, doing all the renovations with our vertically integrated construction company. We completely rebrand the exteriors. We will renovate the interiors to our full platinum level scope, which increases the value of the asset to get that profit margin for the investor. If you'd like to learn about how you can partner with us on these exciting opportunities, and go to our website and set up a call with our team.
I'd like to maybe talk a little bit more about, kind of this mindset, discussion, in your opinion, especially in the lens of some distress, in real estate, whether it be on the residential side, the commercial side, or anything in between. What type of mindset would you say is crucial, for real estate investors, and how can you cultivate it, especially when there's challenges? Real estate always has challenges. I always say birds fly, fish swim, and real estate falls apart, right? So how do you cultivate that mindset, in real estate when things are not always going according to plans?
One thing that I've learned, I think that over just the last 5 years, and I've only been in real estate investing 5 years, so I'm still a newbie in my opinion. Um, I've learned that not just real estate, but even in business, it's all about solving problems, right? I'm typically, even you, most of your calls, I would imagine, are you putting out fires. So you have to be okay with that, number one. And two, realize that just because a problem arises, it doesn't need to derail the entire train. Like I was a knucklehead growing up, and my mom would always tell me, boy, if you go looking for trouble, you're going to find it, right? Well, if you, as a real estate investor, if you go looking for problems, you're going to find them, right? And so many people, they panic when they say, oh my goodness, we got title issues or airship issues or lien issues or, you know, tenant issues, whatever it may be. That is all a part of it. Do not let that throw you off of your game and ruffle your feathers. So many people do.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And I've shared this with my listening audience before. I used to have a T-shirt that said "Jeremy means trouble" when I was a kid. So you're exactly right. Maybe that's why I've been shaped into the man I am today, because I found myself looking for trouble, and anytime I would find it, lessons were learned.
For sure. Absolutely.
So I know you're kind of you're a wholesaling expert really in the space, or you've been in it for a few years, so that makes you an expert, right? I know that wholesaling is often, seen as kind of this gateway to real estate investing. What advice would you give somebody that is interested in getting started in the wholesaling space for the first time?
I think wholesaling is an amazing opportunity. And like you said, it's a gateway to show you what's possible with real estate. Um, because although you can get started in even multifamily, right, with no experience, I'm sure that there's still hurdles and things that you can get creative to overcome, but it's less intimidating wholesaling. The time that it takes you to get an actual paycheck is a lot sooner as well. So now people have proof of concept. It builds confidence. It shows them that this is actually doable. But I do think that we need to be mindful here that wholesaling is just a active investing strategy. It's typically not, for many people, a wealth building strategy. And so it's important to say, okay, though I'm wholesaling and making this capital, where am I putting it? Right? Because the moment that I stop wholesaling, well, I don't get another paycheck. Right? So what assets are we putting in place here, or managing our money in a way to where we're building long-term wealth?
Yeah, that makes total sense, Clifford. Now, coaching over 4,000 investors is quite the feat. Okay, my question is really, what's been the most rewarding moments for you? Coaching thousands of investors, and what types of patterns do you typically see? With those that achieve the most amount of success.
It gives me coaching. Number one was something that I kind of fumbled into. And the way that I fumbled into it was almost like the way that I fumbled into real estate. So when I got set up with my first coach, and I was rocking and rolling, everybody in his community was wondering, like, well, what is Clifford doing? Like, how is he getting these deals? And so literally, I started inviting people over to my house, and we would be like all over the dining room table, papers, like calling leads, the whole nine, to where people literally just wanted to come and watch me work. It was so weird, to where like my wife was like, okay, we need to stop having people come into our house. And the coach that I was working with literally had to start renting out conference rooms for his community so we could see, and we called them marketing madness. And so we would be there live marketing, talking to sellers, closing deals. But it was just something I fumbled into it, and I really enjoyed it because I was able to help people close their deals, right? And help them get their first deal, and show them what's possible through real estate investing. And it just gives me a whole new level of joy and purpose coaching that I didn't even realize that I think that I'm pretty good at. And I think that my countryness gives me an edge because I think I put it in such simple terms that anybody can understand it, like our kids can understand it, right? Like we break it down in such a simple way, or at least I try to. Like I'm not trying to sound super educated and go over people's heads and do all that stuff. Like I keep it as simple as I possibly can.
Yeah, that makes total sense. Now, what about, I know you've got a lot of investors that you've really coached and mentored, but what really separates those, we'll call them top shelf, investors from those that maybe don't achieve that same, degree of success?
Overthinking. Overthinking is a big thing. I actually find that people that have to have every single step figured out, like step one, step two, step three, step four, tend to struggle a lot more, uh, versus somebody that can just uh, just take the actions and take it one step at a time. right? Like I share this little story with people. So many times people are trying to build a Ferrari in the garage and they don't even have a driver's license. But most of the time, you just need to put some wheels on a cardboard box and get rolling and start building momentum, right? Because as we find problems, you're going to be able to overcome those problems. You're going to get experience. You're going to get confidence. So much is going to happen in the actual doing and not in the actual prepping.
Yeah, I so appreciate that, Clifford. And you're exactly right. You know, one of the things that Clifford and I talked about before we got started here was that we both have ADHD. And I think that's typical of most people with ADHD is that we don't have a challenge with this concept of analysis by paralysis or paralysis by analysis. Instead, we just learn our way through the process, right? And that's really kind of been my cornerstone. You know, I'd say most of my life is that I grind it out and I really learn, you know, through those failures, so to speak, whereas most people never even get out of the starting blocks.
Yeah. And I think that if people can just have the courage to take that step of faith and say, okay, let me just make the first call, right? And take these first little steps and figure it out along the way. You know, I tell people I work this business completely backwards. You know, I don't I don't have my private money lender lined up. I don't have all of this stuff lined up. I go get the deal first because when I have the deal, then people tend to take me more serious. And I'm just curious, does that kind of concept work the same way with multifamily? Like if I came and said, "Hey, Jeremy, you know, I got a multifamily that I'm thinking about in Dallas, Texas," you might be like, "Well, yeah, just let me know when you get it." You'll probably brush me off. But if I came back and I said, "Hey, I have this amazing 100-unit complex in Dallas, Texas. This is what's going on," you're probably going to be a little more open to say, "Okay, well, let's look at some of these numbers and see what you actually got."
Yeah, I would say it operates the same way. Just for the record, I'm the host, Clifford, and you're the guest. But I appreciate the question, right? Yeah, you know, you're exactly right. I mean, you know, most investors in multifamily, you know, they're not going to be, you know, willing to really look seriously at the investment until, you know, the deal's under contract. And what's most important, obviously, is that investors really do their due diligence on the sponsor or the operator, you know, more so than the actual property, the asset class, the location, you know, the pitch deck, the business plan, you know, all of that stuff. It all comes down to the operator, which I would suspect is the same, you know, on kind of the wholesale, you know, side of real estate as well.
Yeah.
Well, if you're okay with this, I'd like to talk a little bit more about kind of your philanthropic. Help me out here.
Philanthropy, maybe?
Philanthropy work, and how that work ties, you know, really into your mission as a real estate leader and a mentor.
Oh, I love it, man. I can go on for hours about this. Like, I truly believe that God put me on this earth to be of service to people. I really do that is my calling. And so we have a nonprofit. It's called Cowboys for the Community. And every single month on the third Saturday of the month, rain, shine, it doesn't matter. We go out there and we have a large community cookout for the homeless. Um, I say homeless, but really, you don't have to be homeless to be hungry, right? And so there's no questions asked. People line up and they can just get a hot meal. And there's no knock against any organization, but we do not serve bologna sandwiches and chips. All right, like we cook full meals, right? If you came over to our house and we're eating prime rib, then you better believe that's what I'm feeding my community, right? And period. And I say I wouldn't feed my community anything that I wouldn't feed my friends, family, or children, right? So it just means the world to me because so many people struggle with the simple thing of high quality meals. Here in the United States, over 42 million, something like that, according to the North Texas Food Organization. I forget the acronym for them, but struggle with getting daily meals, right? Like here we are complaining about somebody cooking our steak well done, or bringing us the wrong meal or entree, at our high end restaurant, when somebody is over here just struggling to have a high quality meal, right? And so that's just the kind of work that we do, and I love it. I sit out there with them every month and break bread with them and sit down. It's different when you're cooking for somebody versus just giving them money, right? If there's any chefs listening, or maybe you cook, Jeremy, cooking takes time, it takes effort, it takes energy, it takes thought, it takes preparation, it takes love, right? Try to cook when you got an attitude. Your food's gonna be burnt, right? Like, and so that's my way to show people that, hey, I love you because I'm here cooking and serving and eating with you, because that's time that I can never give back. And so I love it. I do it. It's fun to me. I have a lot of joy doing it.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing. That's obviously, hopefully, that's very inspiring to people that are listening to this podcast episode today. There's a lot of different ways that we can give back, and it doesn't always have to be stroking out a check from your hip pocket, right? There's ways to serve in a material way, including serving people food where they're hungry. And I'm fairly confident in saying it probably gives you a tremendous amount of joy to be able to serve and love on people in the way that you do.
It does. And some people could say it's a selfish thing. I genuinely enjoy it. It brings joy to my life. It makes me feel good about myself and what I do. So I do it every month, and I ain't gonna stop doing it.
Clifford, what would be maybe one or two different ways that our listening audience can learn more about you and connect with you outside of this episode?
Um, Clifford, the Cowboy Closer, on social media. I'm very active on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. It's the same handle across all platforms. I post everything from content on how to get started. I share, information about my master classes or community cookouts or coffee meetups. Again, I'm a real personal person. Um, I sit and just let people know, hey, I'm having coffee here at this location. Y'all come join me. And yeah, we sit down and we have coffee together.
Yeah, that sounds great. Well, we'll put the social handles in the episode for today. Clifford, I've really appreciated you joining us and providing such value to us today.
Oh, thank you, brother. It's been a pleasure, and thank you for having me.
Of course. And listening audience, thank you again for jumping into another episode of The Freedom Point. We look forward to having you join us on the next episode.
Thank you for hanging out with us today and for listening to the Freedom Point podcast, powered by Starting Point Capital. This show is for entertainment purposes only. Nothing said on this show should be considered financial advice. Before making any financial decision, please consult with a professional. This show is copyrighted by the Freedom Point podcast. Written permissions must be granted before syndication or rebroadcasting. If you're interested in connecting, you can find contact information at startingpointcapital.com.